Hi everybody, welcome to At Home with Gigi. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today's video is all about decoupaging. If you've been around my channel any length of time, you know how much I love it. And today I'm going to be sharing with you 6 of my favorite all-time fall DIYs. Beginner friendly, a little bit more advanced, but it's something everyone can do. Now let's get started. For this project, we're going to be using these wooden firecrackers from Michael's, and I got these last year when they had everything about 75% off. And then we're also going to be using this beautiful napkin, and that's so pretty, and that was gifted to me by Brandy. And we're going to be using the color Plaster from Waverly Chalk Paint. I'm just going to go ahead and give each of the wooden pieces one coat of the Waverly Chalk Paint. When I finished painting, I realized that the wood grain was just not showing through the way that I had hoped it would. So I'm going to go back in and just using some of the Waverly Antiquing Wax from Folk Art, and I'm just kind of drawing along the lines where the wood grain would have shown through, and I'm just, as you can see, just drawing the lines in. I got a little heavy-handed in some spots, but that's okay. I just went in with another brush with a little bit of plaster and thinned it down with some water, and I'm just kind of brushing over it just to fade it out a little bit. If you're finding enjoyment and entertainment in this video, I hope you'll give me a big thumbs up and leave me a comment. It sure helps my channel to grow and just lets YouTube know that you are interested and will let them promote my videos, and I would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And if you're not subscribed, what you waiting for? It's totally free. I'm going to use 3 different squares for this project, and I'm just going to cut each of the squares out and do as finely detailed work as I can. It's time consuming, yes, but it is so worth it. And as you can see, I'm just putting down an even, pretty thin layer of Mod Podge, and I'm going to use a different section of the napkin for each of the wood pieces. I'm just lining it up where I want it as best I can, and I'm going to use the cling wrap to help smooth it out so my fingers just not stick to the napkin, because this napkin is very, very thin. It's beautiful, but it's very thin. So this one I had to patch up just a bit. As you see the pumpkin laying there on the table, I kind of chopped it off. My granddaughter and I were FaceTiming, and we were crafting while we were FaceTiming, and I was cutting out my napkins, and I wasn't paying attention and chopped off that part, and I was like, why did you do that? But I just trimmed it up, and as you can see, I'm lining it up, and I think I made it work pretty well. You'll have to tell me. And I just patted it with the cling wrap until I got it to lay down and just blend in with the other, and then I just covered it with a layer of Mod Podge. Once all 3 wood pieces were completely dry, I went back with my nail file and just very gently sanded off the edges, because these napkins are very, very delicate. And again, this is where I just went in and give it a really good coat of Mod Podge and just seal the napkins down really well. Now I'm just using some stems from a bag that I got from Walmart for my pumpkins, but you can go outside and find sticks in your yard for free and make a stem for your pumpkin. I know I say all the time that I love my DIYs, and I do. They're like my little children sometimes. But these, I fell in love with these. I really don't think that they look like napkins on the front. So tell me what you think. Today we're going to be creating a beautiful riser using this wooden palette from Walmart, and we're going to start by giving it 2 coats of the Rust-Oleum chalk paint. Once the paint is dry, I'm going to go ahead and attach the stencil using painter's tape, and I'm only going to be using one word on this stencil, and that's the word welcome. I don't think you can see it very well. And then I'll be using the color Truffle from Waverly Chalk Paint. And I'm just going to be using this little round sponge from the Dollar Tree to apply the paint. And as you can see, I picked up way too much paint, so I dabbed some of that off before I go in. Because if you have too much paint on your sponge, it could cause some bleeding with your stencil, and I want to prevent that as much as possible. Isn't this napkin beautiful? I just love it. And I've already removed both of the additional plies, and then I'm just going to be using my favorite method to detach the white and just separate the napkin, and that's just a tiny paintbrush with some water. I love the uneven edges that it gives. To me, it just makes it blend in with your project so much better. Gone ahead and added a layer of Mod Podge to each of the slats and let that dry before we move on to the next step. And we're going to be using the iron-on method to attach our napkin, and that is just simply letting your Mod Podge dry, and then as you can see, I've placed a sheet of parchment over my napkin, and I'm just very gently running the iron over it, and it's on very low setting, and it will reactivate that Mod Podge and cause the napkin to adhere to your surface. Going to continue with this process all the way around the palette until my eyes are happy with the amount of sunflowers that I have. Because of the way I've positioned the sunflowers where it's covering the gap between the 2 slats, I decided to go ahead and just use my finger sander and remove that excess napkin because I was afraid it might catch on something and then cause the napkin to tear, especially right there where that gap is. And I do go back later and just use my X-Acto knife in a nail file just to smooth all of that out. I decided while I was sanding, I might as well go ahead and just sand off all the excess napkin that I have placed on here so far. And as you see, I have an extra piece of parchment paper right there. And I did that on purpose because there's a tiny bit of the sunflower, the large one at the very bottom, that was hanging over onto that 3rd slat. And I wanted to make sure when I was ironing that I didn't accidentally attach it to the 2 flowers there, so the parchment paper was just slid right up under those edges to keep it from attaching to that slat. And then I'm just going in with this nail file and just very, very gently removing that extra napkin. And this is very sped up. Like I said, this is just very gently because you do not want to tear your napkin. For our feet, we're going to be using these large beads, and they came from Amazon, and I've gone ahead and given them 2 coats of Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white. I've gone ahead and placed little marks on the palette just to make sure I'm going to get the legs or feet, whatever you want to call them, exactly where I want them. And I'm just going to use some Gorilla Hot Glue to attach the beads. Y'all, this was just so very fast and easy to do, really. I'm pokey in doing crafts because I like to take my time, but this was just so very fast to put together. You could use any napkins, any colors that you want. I chose this because next year I can use it throughout summer if I choose. I did take it outside and give it a good spray with Mod Podge and let it set. Then I sprayed it again just to seal everything in. I could not be more pleased with how this turned out, and I hope that you guys love this as much as I do. For this project, we're going to be using Waverly chalk paint and ink and white, and I forgot to show you the white, for the pumpkins from the Dollar Tree and scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby. I've gone ahead and given each of the pumpkins a good sanding down on the front and back, especially the front with all that glitter, and I'm going to give 2 of the pumpkins a coat of the Waverly white chalk paint, and I was running low, so I thinned it out a little too much with water, so I had to go back and give the 2 pumpkins that I'm painting white, I had to give them 2 coats each. Now the 2 white pumpkins I am going to be adding the scrapbook paper to, so you do not have to paint them if you don't want to, but anytime I'm decoupaging anything, napkin, scrapbook paper, tissue, whatever, it's just my preference to paint them white. I just love this paper. I think it is so pretty, and I want to make sure that I get these black and white check pumpkins in the center of the wooden pumpkins. So I'm just going to kind of play around with it and get my placement just right. Then I'm going to go in with a pencil and just trace around exactly where I want to make my cut. I'm going to use Mod Podge to attach the scrapbook paper. You can use whatever you prefer, glue stick, spray adhesive, but whenever I'm using scrapbook paper, I prefer Mod Podge because I can put a very generous layer down because the scrapbook paper is very thick. And I want to make sure that this paper is going to adhere to my surface. And I'm just lining it up as best I can. Then I'm just going to smooth it out, making sure I get any air bubbles or excess Mod Podge that might be up under that paper that will leave it kind of lumpy and bumpy. We're going to be spelling out the word fall and putting that on the front of each of the little pumpkins. And I didn't have any orange letters, so I decided to just paint these large letters that you can pick up from the Dollar Tree. And I mixed together Waverly's chalk paint pumpkin and white and mixed that together. And I just was not fond of this color. I had found a pumpkin at Walmart and it was a peachy pink, so I just mixed together some apple barrel blush pink and added that to it, and I love it. I love this color. I think it is so pretty. Judge, tell me what you think of the color. After the letters had dried, and I just very carefully pulled them up so as not to tear them, and then I'm just figuring out my placement, trying to center them up as best I can, and then I'm just going to attach them with some Mod Podge. I did go back over the top of each of the pumpkins and just completely cover it with Mod Podge, especially the black ones, because I wanted to make sure it didn't look kind of weird with just a little bit of Mod Podge on top of the letters, and I also wanted to make sure everything was sealed in. Now I'm showing you 2 ribbons here, but I only used one, the lace ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I just made a quick and simple little bow, tied it in the center with some jute twine, and just attached it with some hot glue to the front of each of the pumpkins. As you can see, I wrapped the stem of each of the pumpkins with jute twine. In the move, I did lose some of the footage for this video, so sorry about that. But napkin. Just use some jute twine from the Dollar Tree, a little bit of hot glue, and just wrapped it around the stem. I just love these colors, the black and white neutral farmhouse colors, and I love how the fall letters turned out, and the pumpkin back there is my inspiration for that color. So y'all gotta tell me what you think. Did I get close to it? For this DIY, we're going to be using one of these metal trays from the Dollar Tree, and I've wiped it down really well with alcohol. Once it's dried, I took it outside and gave it 2 coats of the Rust-Oleum's Flat Black. Once it was dry, I mixed together some Waverly's white chalk paint and a lot of water, and I'm using an old paintbrush and just going around the outer edge. I want those little details around the outside of the tray to really pop out, so I'm just lightly brushing over it. If I get too heavy-handed in some areas, I do use a baby wipe and just wipe it back a little bit. We're going to add this orange napkin to the bottom of the tray, and y'all, I wasted one of the napkins. They were gifted to me. Trying to get this backing off, it would not come off, absolutely would not, so I just rolled with it. I've never done this before, used a napkin without taking the back off. I wouldn't advise it, but it worked for some reason with this napkin. I did put a very heavy layer of Mod Podge, and you can see the napkin is holding up very well to my pushing and pulling and tugging to get that line out of the center. But I just used this plastic wrap and just smoothed any air bubbles and just smoothed this napkin out and had no issues with it. This pumpkin was part of a garland, and I just filled in the 2 holes at the top with some spackling and let that dry, and then I just gave the whole thing a good sanding down and then just wiped back any grit or anything like that. And then I'm going in with Waverly's plaster, and I'm going to give it 1 coat, and then before it's completely dry, I'm going to go back in with some burnt umber from Apple Barrel and just brush around the outer edges and just kind of create those pumpkin lines just to give it a little bit more definition. After letting the pumpkin set overnight and make sure it was completely dry, I'm going to come back and add this rub-on transfer from the Dollar Tree, and it says Simply Blessed, and I love this. It's so sweet. I cannot find any more rub-on transfers like this at my local Dollar Trees. This was picked up a couple of years ago or more now, and I'm just placing it as best I can in the center of the pumpkin, and I'm going to use this little tool. It came with some other rub-on transfers that I bought on Amazon, and I love this tool. It works so well. But anyway, I'm just rubbing over the letters. For whatever reason, this transfer did not want to go on, so it took quite a bit of rubbing back and forth to get it to adhere. And whenever I thought I had everything down, I went to lift it up and realized the bottom of my S's had not come off, so I lined it back up as best I could, and I used my fingernails, as you can see right here, for this part, and it did end up coming off really well. Then I'm just going to come back in with a layer of Mod Podge just to seal that transfer in. I'm using hot glue to attach the pumpkin, but you can use your glue of choice, and I thought that the bottom of the pumpkin needed just a little something, so I'm just popping in a little bit of this Spanish moss, and I made a messy bow off camera, and we're just going to add that to the top of the tray. And then I got to looking at it, and y'all know me, it just was looking like it was missing something, so I took some raffia and just tied it in a knot, trimmed it up, and then popped that right into the center of the bow. And I thought that was just the perfect little extra touch that it needed, and I think this is just so sweet. For this project, we're going to be using this beautiful napkin, an acorn sign from the Dollar Tree, and some pine cones. And I'm going to go ahead and give the acorn sign a coat of Waverly's chalk paint in the color plaster. Let that dry. Then I'm going to go in and add a layer of Mod Podge and let that dry as well, because we're going to be using the iron-on method to attach our napkin. A little trick that I like to do before I attach my napkin, I like to go over it with an iron and just smooth out any wrinkles or anything. And it helps so much just flatten out your napkin when you attach it. And you want to make sure you've removed all the plies. I've already removed both of the plies. And as you saw, I used a little piece of tape to keep that napkin in place and give me a sharp, crisp edge right across the top of the acorn. Then I'm just going to hit it with my finger sander and just remove all of that excess napkin. I love using the iron-on method because it gives you such a perfect, smooth finish almost every single time. For the next part of our DIY, I'm going to be using pine cones for my yard. If you buy them, you won't have to do this part, but I'm popping them in the oven on 200 degrees for about 90 minutes. I check them every 20 to 30 minutes. Please make sure you do that, because it's to kill any mold or little pests that might be in them. And yes, I had 2 that was in the bottom of my pan. Once they cooled, I'm going in with these little cheap clippers from the Dollar Tree. And y'all, this worked so well. You see the things lined up across there. I wanted you to see I tried each and every one of them, and it just smushed the little scales that I'm clipping off. But anyway, these worked like a charm. So if you find them, stock up on them. And then once that's done, I have a whole pile here and then another pile off camera you can't see, and I'm going to apply them one by one with some hot glue. And yes, this took a while, but it is so worth it. I cannot wait for you to see the finished product at the end. Before I get to the stem, I'm going to stop and add some twine. I decided not to go all the way up the acorn stem with the little segments, and I'm just using a little bit of hot glue, making sure I'm using my little finger protectors not to burn my fingers, and then I'm just going to wrap the twine all the way up the stem. As I'm doing this, I'm looking at my side and I'm like, why did I not paint the top of the acorn brown? It would have made it blend in a whole lot better, but I do fix that in just a moment. But first, I'm snipping off the tops of the little segments, and I'm going back and hot gluing them on top of those jagged edges just to give it a better finished look and to make it look more like an authentic acorn. And here I am going back in with just a teeny tiny brush and some nutmeg from Apple Barrel. I'm just going around the outside and any little peaks of white that might be showing through. Then I'm just creating a little hanger with some twine and just hot gluing it, and I'll pop a piece of ribbon over the back just to make sure it stays in place. I made a very simple bow out of some raffia and just hot glued it to the stem of the acorn. My battery died, so I lost that footage, so sorry about that. But I wanted the segments and the pine cone at the top of the acorn to be the star of this piece. And I think it's just very rustic, kind of primitive. It's very different than what I normally do. It was a little bit time consuming to make, but it was so very easy. And I love this piece. I really do. I'd like to know what your thoughts are about it. For the first part of this project, we're going to be using this wooden pumpkin from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a quick coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster. Now after my paint has dried, I'm going to go in and put down a layer of Mod Podge and let that dry before we add our napkin. This month we're crafting our stash, and I'm going to be using this beautiful leopard print napkin that came from Hobby Lobby. Now most of your napkins are going to be 2 and 3 ply, so you do want to make sure you remove those before you Mod Podge or decoupage your napkin to your surface. And I am taping it because I want to keep it in place because I want a very clean, crisp line across the stem of my pumpkin. If you haven't guessed by now, we're using the iron-on method to attach the napkin, and this is my absolute favorite way to decoupage. And you're just running your iron on low temperature over the surface of your napkin, and I placed a sheet of wax paper, I believe it is, just for protecting my napkin, and the heat reactivates that Mod Podge, and see what a beautiful, pretty much wrinkle-free surface you have. And I just used my little finger sander to remove the excess napkin. For For the next part of our project, we're going to be using these two little pumpkins. They were part of a garland, and I've gone ahead and filled in the holes at the top with some spackling. Let that dry, and then we're going to give them a coat of the Waverly chalk paint in white. For the shorter pumpkin, we're going to attach this piece of scrapbook paper that came from Hobby Lobby, and I've had this forever in my stash, and I think it is so beautiful. It just reminds me of kind of a shabby chic look, and I thought it would just go perfect with this project. Now I'm trying to remove as much of this excess paper as possible because I didn't really want to have to do a lot of sanding because of the texture of this scrapbook paper. I was afraid it might start either tear or start to fray on me, and it did fray just a little bit, but with trimming it off with some little tiny scissors and with some Mod Podge, I just went around and it did stop the fraying. We're going to add this little blessed word to the front of the pumpkin, and this came from Dollar Tree. You can get them in a pack of, I think it's like 6, usually during the fall season, and I've just given it a coat of Waverly chalk paint and truffle. And for our third pumpkin, we're going to paint it. And as you can see, I have a variety of paints there on my plate. I've just kind of mixed together pumpkin from Waverly chalk paint, burnt umber, and bright red from apple barrel, and then I mixed in with that a little bit of Waverly chalk paint and just kind of mixed it all together until I got the color that I was looking for. We're going to use this long sign. Gosh, what is this thing? Anyway, you get them from Dollar Tree. They have them for every season. And we're going to give it 2 coats of ink from Waverly chalk paint. And we're going to be using this as our stand for the 3 pumpkins. After it had dried, I went back in with a chipping brush and just using some of the leftover paint from the pumpkin and just kind of dry brushed back and forth just to lighten it up a little bit and give it more of a little bit of a rustic, distressed look. We're going to use these little wooden blocks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to hot glue them to the back of each of the pumpkins just to give it more support and to help it stand up on this base. Y'all, I just realized I did not show you the part of wrapping the twine around the pumpkin stem. Sorry about that. I'm using hot glue to attach my pumpkins, but you may want to use something that has a little bit more of a permanent hold, like E6000 or Gorilla Gel Glue. That's my favorite. It doesn't smell so bad, but because I'm trying to rush and get this video done, I'm using hot glue because it sets up so much faster. I'm adding in just a little bit of extra hot glue beside each of the tumbling blocks just for some extra security. We're just going to make a simple little bow. We've just folded the ribbon over like you're making an awareness ribbon, and then I'm going to do the same for the one with the pumpkins on it, and I believe both of these came from the Dollar Tree. Not quite sure about the little pumpkin ribbon, but I think it is just absolutely adorable. And I'm just making sure I get my loops somewhat even because I'm terrible about not getting my loops even, and then I'm just going to tie it off in the center with the pipe cleaner. I've gone ahead and made a couple of other little shoestring bows for the other 2 pumpkins, and isn't this little leopard print ribbon adorable? That came from Amazon. I've had that for quite a while. And then I made a little bow out of some more twine, and then I'm just adding them all with some hot glue, and then I'm just going to pop in this little flower in the center to cover up that pipe cleaner. Now you could stop right here if you wanted to, and I almost did, but I got to looking at it. I'm like, the base of this just looks so plain, so I decided to add in just a little bit of Spanish moss, and I'm just putting down a layer of hot glue and adding in the Spanish moss, and then that led to it needed another little pumpkin or some little flowers or something, so I just continued on. Like I said, you could have just stopped after you added the 3 pumpkins and the bows, but I wanted to just add just a little bit more. More is always more when you're crafting, right? just going to pop in a few little embellishments and make it look all pretty on top of the moss. And this foam pumpkin was left over from a project last year, and I just removed that plastic stem, broke off a stick from outside and popped that in there, a little tiny leaf and a little more of the moss. And then we're just going to hot glue that on front and add in some of these pine cones and acorns and some of those really cute little yellow wildflowers. And I think it is just absolutely perfect. I love it. Y'all, I am really getting ready to decorate for fall. Is anybody else getting ready to decorate for fall? I think this is going to be such a great piece to add to my fall decor this year. And y'all excuse my tabletop. It's a rescue piece and I have not had the time to refinish it. I've been meaning to do it for a very long time. I hope you'll let me know which of these 6 DIYs was your favorite. Thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I'm almost to my 3,000 subscriber goal, and I'm trying to get there by my birthday on August the 19th. So I would love it if you'd become a part of my YouTube family. I'll see you soon.